Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Sacred Sisterhood podcast. My name is Mary Wright. I am your host, and today we are going to be talking about ancestral healing and clearing, especially as we are moving towards Samhain, also known as Halloween, October 31st in a few days here. And this year is also Halloween on full moon in Taurus. So very, very powerful time period that we are in. We are in Scorpio season now, which is all about shadow integration, really moving in and clearing out things that are not serving, releasing old, outdated stories and patterns, and coming into a deeper level of self-love and acceptance of our shadow to allow our shadow to integrate. I personally am a Scorpio, so I am very much in tune with the death and rebirth cycle that a Scorpio loves. I'm very deep and passionate. I love all things sex. I love all things mystery, all things deep, dark, and dirty. I love it. I love it. I love it. I thrive on it. I have lived my life, especially the last 10 years, in very much a constant state of death and rebirth. Not only the death and rebirth cycle that we go through as women every single month with our periods, and not only the death and rebirth cycle that we see in a year with the cycles and the seasons, spring to winter and back to spring, but rather I have become quite masterful at basically rebirthing myself, releasing old identities, rebirthing myself, basically starting my life on fire, surrendering it over to the goddess, and building it from new. This is coming from someone who walked away from a 5-year relationship, which I owned a mortgage with this man because I went through my spiritual awakening the last year of our relationship and realized that I could not grow into who I was destined to be by staying in this relationship. And so I walked away from the white picket fence lifestyle, and I walked away from certainty and pretty much knowing exactly how my life would look like the rest of my life. I lit that all on fire and I started traveling, and along the way I ended up meeting my soulmate partner, my Irish man, my Irish king, and I moved across the world with my dog. And I'm only 28. I'm about to turn 28 in a few weeks, actually. November 17th is my birthday. So I'm very much a Scorpio. And I love working with the shadow. It's a huge piece of the work that I do out in the world is helping women integrate their shadows and clear out those blocks that are keeping them feeling powerless and keeping them feeling blocked and stifling their creative energy. I help them clear that out so that they can come into alignment with their soul purpose and expand their pleasure and expand their connection with their womb space and really reclaim their feminine fires. So that takes shadow work, right? So, this is an incredible time of year. Samhain is when the veil is the thinnest between our physical world and the spiritual world. And it's a time, Samhain is an ancient Celtic holiday and tradition. And actually, my husband, him being Irish, he grew up having huge bonfires with the community where every little estate, little community would gather together, and they would bring pallets and old furniture and just whatever needs to be burned. They would make a massive, massive pit of things to burn, and then the children would all gather, and there would be a couple adult men that were minding the fire on the night of Halloween. And as there's teenagers or older teenagers, they might be having a couple beers or whatever. But it was like this huge thing every year of gathering together to have a bonfire. So in Celtic tradition, Samhain was a night to honor our ancestors, to honor the dead, and they would have big feasts, and they would set plates at their tables for their loved ones that had passed and pour them their favorite drinks so that their loved ones that had transitioned would come and visit. And with it being such a thin veil, they were able to easily communicate with their loved ones that had transitioned. And, it would be a big fire ceremony as well to just stay warm and to just, it was kind of like the last hoorah before we really descended into the cold and the dark, mysterious time of winter. So it is a very, very powerful time. And November 1st is actually Witches' New Year. It's a beginning of the year for witches, and it's also considered the Day of the Dead. And so here in Austria, which on the land of Austria, the most ancient people here were the Celts. In Austria, they honor November 1st as a bank holiday. Everything closes down and families gather at gravesides to honor those that have passed. So it is a really profound time, and the energies are supporting us to really connect with our own ancestors, our own lineage, to offer them healing, to offer them clearing, as well as to tune in and ask for support, ask for guidance. In our lower chakras, we are holding much of our ancestors' trauma and imprinting. And so our lower chakras are our more dense, our physical chakras. This is our root, our sacral, and our solar plexus. And so when you think about our ancestral line, they probably experienced plagues and starvation, villages being raped and pillaged, dating back to priestess temple times. The temples were burned to the ground and priestesses were persecuted. It wasn't safe for them to be conduits of goddess. And during this time is when the goddess went underground and the world shifted into a patriarchal system, which was designed to separate people from their connection with God and goddess, and to separate people from each other, and to the systems were put in place to keep us in poverty, to keep a hierarchical structure, basically, so that there were people very much kept in poverty and slavery, and then the people at the top of the hierarchy just kept getting richer and richer. And so we also think about, of course, I've talked about this quite a bit on this show, is the witch burnings and the witch wound. It wasn't just witches that were burned it was pretty much like 800 to the 1800s. There was about 1,000-year period where about 9 million women worldwide were killed on behalf of these witch trials. And it wasn't just women, there were men too, and the families of women, but it was mostly women. And it wasn't just witches, it was women that had flourishing gardens. It was women that had red in their hair. It was women that were too beautiful. It was women that weren't beautiful enough. It was women that had big noses. It was women whose husbands had passed away. It was women that were born with physical disabilities. There was so many women that were slaughtered during this time just for the sake that they were women, and the church wanted to instill this very, very distorted sense of power over people and to keep the goddess underground, because the patriarchal system knew that if the goddess was fully flourishing and fully activated in both men and women, then they wouldn't have the power and the hold on people that they did at that time. And so, during the witch burnings, women that worked with herbs, midwives, women that massaged, that were healers, that were gardeners, that had intuitive knowings, it wasn't safe for them to be themselves. And so they had to stifle that. They had to work in secret. They had to gather in secret, and so this very much affects how safe we feel as light workers or as healers or just as intuitive women to step out into the world and offer our gifts and bring our medicine to the world, right? So during this very, very dark period of time for thousands of years, humanity felt abandoned by God and goddess, because before this very, very dark period, we were in a golden age where, sacred union, tantric union between man and woman, where together they were one, was just the innate nature. It was a very, very abundant, thriving, prosperous, healthy, happy time on earth. But then when the tyrants took over and started, basically killing off the goddess, making her disappear, which, I mean, she never really disappeared. She just went underground until it was safe again for her to come back, which is now. So this abandonment, feeling abandoned by God and goddess, our creator, which creator never went anywhere. We just became very, very weighed down with density, traumas, and programs that kept us from being able to fully feel and tune in and tap into that love, nourishment, and protection of God and goddess, of source creator. And so this time period, that sense of abandonment, that sense of our connection to source being severed, affects our ability to receive in the now. It affects our ability to really open up to our true divine nature, because there's a lot of distortion, there's a lot of fear, there's a lot of traumatic imprints that our body and our DNA holds from our ancestors. So this affects how safe we feel to show up in the world. It affects how safe we feel to be happy in our lives, because it's like, oh, if I actually allow myself to be happy with what I have, I might lose everything. And so why allow myself to be happy now for what I have, type thing, right? It affects how safe we feel to share our gifts and our intuitive knowings with people. It affects our ability to feel pleasure in our body, and it affects our yoni, our womb's ability to feel pleasure, because there's so many layers and blocks and walls of trauma imprints from our ancestors. And so when we have these blocks in our wombs, which our wombs are like a cauldron, it's like a sponge that absorbs and holds any sort of trauma, any sort of unhealthy sexual experience, any time that we were entered or our ancestors were entered out of love or forcefully or out of not in respect. Our wombs hold that. Our wombs hold the traumas of our mothers, our grandmothers, and all through our matriarchal lineage. Our wombs, our DNA, our bones, our energy field holds those times of rape and pillaging, of witch trials, of priestess persecution. It holds the energies of our ancestors dying of plagues and starvation and being slaughtered in war and so forth. And so this blocks our creativity. This blocks our ability to really feel powerful within ourselves and safe and supported in our bodies, because this world is pretty dense and we hold that density as well in our lower chakras. And so we tend to kind of float up in our upper chakras, not really wanting to be fully in our bodies. Yeah. So this keeps all of these like stories and imprints that we hold within us, keeps us feeling small, it keeps us feeling powerless, and keeps us looping in fear stories and limiting patterns. And this is what really blocks us from being able to access our soul codes. And by soul codes, I mean like our divine blueprint, our true soul's essence. It's like our embodiment of our higher self beyond the limiting human self. It's bringing that heaven down onto earth and expressing through us. It's allowing ourselves to fully be the embodiment of Christ consciousness here in human form, because it is safe. And so all of these traumas and imprints keeps us from being able to be that, to hold that, to embody that, because we don't feel safe, because our ancestors are asking for us to honor and heal them and release them, so that we're no longer carrying their stories and we're breaking generational patterns of toxicity, of greed, of disrespect, of abandonment, of addiction, and so forth, right? So, but beyond, the traumas of our ancestors before that, like I said, there was the golden age that we knew how to work with herbs. We knew how to heal with herbs. We knew how to grow flourishing gardens and crops so that we could, live and thrive and provide for our families. We knew how to create elixirs and healing foods. We knew how to heal diseases with herbs and foods. We knew how to work with the elements of fire and water and earth and the earth, and we knew how to work with the moon and align our lives naturally with the moon. We used the moon as, our gauge of time. Rather than having a 30 to 31 day cycle, we had a 28-day cycle. We would gauge the new moon as the start of a cycle. And once we got to the dark moon at the end of 28 days, that was the end of the cycle. Then we would start again. And so tribes and villages were able to say, okay, I will be here in 2 moons. In two full moons from now, I will be here and I'll come get you, or whatever, right? So that's how we lived our lives, was in accordance to the moon, accordance to the stars, and that just came naturally. We knew exactly how to have clear and direct communication with the spirits of nature, to have clear and direct communication with the ancestral realm, with the star peoples, with the spirits of rocks, with the spirits in the celestials. It was just a very clear channel. There was no distortion, no blocks. And so we were so connected to source, to God, to creator. We had very, very powerful knowings about our wombs. We knew how to work with the magic of our monthly blood. We knew how to heal with it. We knew how to use it in ceremony. We knew how to align our lives with the cycle of our periods. We knew that during our periods, that was a very sacred time to be spent in community with other bleeding sisters, because our psychic abilities are enhanced during that time. And so we would receive direct, clear insights from source, from God, from goddess, from our guides to support us in the month ahead. And the tribe honored that. The tribe looked at women that were bleeding as pure conduits of divine energy, and so it was honored and respected. We in ancient times, we knew how to properly usher in a soul birthing into this world without the traumatic effects of birthing now. When a baby is in a womb, it's a very lucid experience. They are directly connected to the great cosmic womb. So it's very mystical, mysterious, velvety. It's unconditional love. And so as the baby transitions from that realm through the birthing canal into the physical realm, the outside world, the experience that they have during that is very, very impactful on their connection to source, their connection to God, their spiritual connection, as well as their how much light that they can hold, their development of their brains, and so forth. So now when a baby comes into the world, they're met and greeted by fluorescent lighting and scary people in surgical masks all dressed up in white. And so it's like, WTF is this? Let me go back into, pure source love consciousness that I was just basking in for the last 9 months. Like, what is this world? This is traumatic. And then their little umbilical cords are sliced way too soon, and so their lungs are gasping for breath, and so they experience their first trauma within seconds of their arrival into this planet, which is very damaging to their brain, to their nervous systems. So this was not the case in ancient times. This is not the case at all. It was a shamanic birthing process. It was done in ceremony. It was an ushering of this soul, like a gatekeeper for this soul between realms. The way that death was handled was completely different. Death was not seen as an ending, but rather a celebration as that soul continued on to the next realm. Sex magic was like natural between man and woman. They would come into sacred union together, and they would make love and create worlds and create new dimensions through their intention of their sex. They would create thriving crops and new technologies and so forth. Like, it was just a completely different way of life. So the deeper that we go into our healing and integration of the imprints of our ancestors, that the traumas of our ancestors, the more that we can unlock our soul codes and the healing gifts and wisdom that our ancestors carried as well in the golden age before, the dark ages. And not to mention the fact that our ancestors want to support us in the times that we are in. When we look outside in the world, everything is like, we're seeing the dismantling, right? So things look quite chaotic. People are freaked out, and our ancestors, they see it from an eagle's eye perspective. So they are actually here wanting to support us, wanting to give us love and wisdom and guidance to support us in the time that we are in. Because believe it or not, we're ushering in another golden age. I know it doesn't look like it on a surface level, but on an energetic level, that's what's happening. We're just seeing the collapse, the dismantling. Because as we know in our own healing journeys, it's not all butterflies and rainbows. When we go into the shadow work, we're going to feel some feelings. Things are going to look all messy and feel crunchy. And guess what? That's where humanity is right now. We are in a massive shadow integration period. But on the other side means that we can hold more light, we can be more light, and we can really amplify and expand into our healing gifts, our wisdom, and our own medicine that we hold within us. So, where to start? Let me just take a drink. So, on Samhain, Halloween night, under the full moon, which is fabulous, you can light a fire, you can light a candle for your ancestors. You can, perhaps you had a grandparent that passed away within the last few years that you want to connect with. Make them their favorite cup of tea or pour them their favorite drink, whether it be wine or whiskey, and leave that on your altar. And just ask them to connect with you and to help you heal your ancestral line. Intention is the most important thing. You can get really creative with your ceremony. Maybe all you want to do is just light a candle and maybe put a picture of one of your grandparents that passed or a loved one that has passed up on your altar. However you want to do it is great. Maybe you want to go a lot farther back in your ancestral lineage and, connect with your Native American roots or your Celtic roots or your shamanic roots. This is your ceremony. Play with it. So I want to tell you a story. My Oma on my mom's side, so my mom's mom, she transitioned at age 88 during Lionsgate this year, the beginning of, or end of July, beginning of August. And I didn't feel very close with my Oma growing up. I always saw her as a very kind of strict, religious woman, a woman very faithful to her church and to the Bible and to God. And she wasn't like that fun, loving grandmother like on my other side. She was more, she was strict like a parent. And so I always kind of viewed her through that. But the last few years before she transitioned, I would make sure I called her regularly. When I moved to Austria, I started writing her letters to share with her my life over here and so forth. So I developed a different kind of connection with her as an adult than what I had when I was a little girl. But as she was getting close to transition, I ended up, because obviously I'm in Austria, she was in Canada, I couldn't visit her due to COVID, and I couldn't fly to Canada. And so I ended up in meditation, going and visiting her in her hospital room, and I was able to very directly communicate with her, and I could feel that she was ready to transition. It was very close, so I filled her room with roses, and for some reason, I just kept connecting to this younger child spirit of her, like her maiden self. And she was dancing and just so close to passing over through the light and so forth, and she told me she was ready, and it was just like really beautiful. And after I connected with her telepathically, I ended up doing an ancestral healing where I sang healing tones to both sides of my lineage, my mom's side and my dad's side. And I just set the intention with these tones to send healing. And I'm just going to show you how I did it. in case you feel called to doing the same. So doesn't take talent. That's all I did. And I just, I put on ancestral music and I was just singing tones, and I just saw light and love moving through both my ancestral lines. And what I didn't realize what I was doing was I was clearing it so that her soul could pass through easier. After she transitioned, I spent that first 24 hours seeing visions and like kind of holding my Oma as she worked through her life, her maiden, her mother, her crone years. And it was like I was a death doula. And I've never experienced such things. Didn't know anything about death doulas until this. I was just like guided naturally to hold this space for her soul. I ended up going out to my favorite place in the woods called Hexenloch, which means witch's hole in German. And I laid flowers there for her, and just set the intention to assist her soul in transitioning and like moving through the other realms. And I spent my time doing a little bit of grieving as I felt called to. But then after, like, as soon as the 24-hour mark hit, I felt like the grieving was over, and then I ended up I was plummeted with a bunch of information from her that she has been the shamanic medicine grandmother woman that has been a guide to me this past year. That was an aspect of her in a past life. She's been a mentor to me in many, many past lives. And I come from a long lineage of priestesses, but I am the first one who felt safe in this lifetime to wake to my true totality, whereas other members in my family were very devoted to their religious structures and beliefs. Whereas for me, I've been in my own spiritual path and haven't limited myself to a set belief system. So my spiritual path has been very personal and my own. And she just was giving me so much information about my family line. She helped me heal shame that I had felt around being a Mennonite and so forth. And it was just very, very powerful. And so she has since been a very powerful ally to me from the other side to support me in this transition that I've been going through in my work, where I've been shifting more into talking about the womb, which has activated a whole bunch of past life fears and traumas around the temples being burned, around persecution and so forth. And so she has been a support and a deep friend of mine and mentor of mine since she passed really, to support me in this next phase of my work. And so what I'm saying to you is that even if you weren't close to a family member when they were alive in this life, you may find that as you connect with your ancestral line and lineage, that you become much closer with them now that they are in the spiritual world, because they're pure source unconditional love on that side, and so they love you, they want to support you, they want to give you messages to help you on your journey. So I offer this story to you because storytelling is like one of the most ancient practices to help people understand and to inspire people to go on their own journey. I tell you this story that connecting with my Oma since she has passed has been very, very powerful for me. And so maybe you feel called to set the intention to connect with a grandparent or an aunt or an uncle or a parent or even farther back, just to open yourself up to receiving that love and that support. And you can just leave offerings for your ancestors: milk, wine, tea, bread, alcohol, flowers, and say a prayer to them. So you can, just like me, you can sing healing or send music down your ancestral line, and you can do this in a meditative place so that you can really see your ancestral line. But if you just do it from your heart space with the intention, you can connect with your ancestors quite easily. And really, like, when you're doing this, when you're connecting with your ancestors, just bring love and awareness into your root and into your womb, because that's where we feel a lot of their their traumas and imprinting. So just, feel into any tightness you may be feeling in those spots, and just breathe into it. Say, I love you, I accept you, thank you for being here, thank you for teaching me. So I'm also going to offer you a prayer incantation that you can say out loud. So you might want to pause this to grab a pen and paper. And you can just make this your own, but this would be like kind of the foundation that you can speak out loud if you're wanting to just release any energies from your ancestors and come into deeper relationship with them. I hereby now call upon my higher self, my guides, angels, and ancestors of the highest, who love and support me unconditionally. I call upon the transmutative fires, replenishing waters, clearing winds, and grounding earth. I now declare that I hereby release any traumas, imprints, limiting stories, and agreements in my energy field from my ancestors and my lineage that is not in alignment with my highest. I request that my soul codes and true divine blueprint activate and fill me now. I now open myself up to receiving any messages, guidance, and healings from my ancestors now. I declare it is done across all time, space, dimensions, and realities. Thank you, and so it is, and so it is, and so it is. So after you say this out loud, you can dance, you can take deep breaths, maybe you feel like you want to release something into a fire. Whatever you feel called to do is perfect. And just open yourself up to see how it unfolds from there. You can say it as often as you like, whenever you feel like you need to do some ancestral clearing. So if you enjoyed this episode and really want to kind of learn more about this womb wisdom that our ancestors had, and learn more about how you can clear out the traumas and the imprints that we're holding in our womb that is blocking our capacity of pleasure, I invite you to join me in the Circle of the Womb Temple, which is a global, offered worldwide, monthly sisterhood membership into a online temple space in which we will be diving deeply into our womb for healing and for deepening our connection with her. So our first chapter, which is a 3-month segment, will be spent focusing on aligning our lives with our periods, our feminine cycles, that natural cyclical rhythm of a woman, and connecting with our period blood and the magic and sacredness of such. We will also be learning how to connect with the portal and the oracle that is our yoni, to increase our intuition and to just allow her to guide us and lead the way to our soul purpose alignment. So this is for any woman of any age at any stage of womanhood. Doesn't matter if you get your period consistently, doesn't matter if you don't get your period at all anymore, doesn't matter if you don't have a womb. This is for any woman or human identifying as a woman who wants to reclaim her divine feminine fire and power. Okay, so it's $44 a month. The commitment is for 3 months. There will be other chapters in the future. The next chapter we're going to be getting more into the maiden, mother, crone archetypes. And included in the $44 a month is 1 monthly guided meditation a month to help you connect deeper with your yoni. Included is 1 Womb Wisdoms Teachings PDF and 3 full moon gatherings included in the 3-month chapter. And so this full moon gathering is done via Zoom. You're gathering with sisters all around the world to connect with their wombs, to connect with each other, to practice taking up space, to practice being seen, and just really heal in the fabric of sisterhood community, because there are certain things that we just can't heal on our own, and we need the power and the holding, the fabric of sisterhood and community to support us. And wombs is one of those things, because the womb is a multidimensional portal to access all versions of ourselves. And it also is it's like a wisdom codex. It holds all of our ancestral traumas, all of our ancestral wisdom and medicine. It holds everything. It holds all of our experiences, positive and negative. It holds it all there. And it holds our direct connection to the goddess. Yeah? So also included is access to the Facebook group Temple Space, which I will be popping on live in there, sharing teachings in there and so forth. And that's also going to be a key aspect of just feeling held and supported and seen in this sisterhood. So the doors actually close tomorrow, October 28th, but I recognize that this podcast is only the day before. So if you're listening to this later in the week, I will let you know that our first global gathering is going to be on Sunday, November 1st. So I'm going to say that the latest you can actually, like the absolute latest that you can register is like Friday late at night or early Saturday morning. Okay? So once again, that's $44 US a month for a 3-month commitment. And if you feel called, if you want to explore more what is included in this and some of the teachings that we'll be going into, I will be leaving the link in the show notes. And there's actually on the invitation page, there is a guided meditative grand tour into the temple so that you can meet the temple gatekeepers, which are Isis, Sekhmet, Mary Magdalene, Mother Mary, and Aphrodite, and to really just feel into the frequency of the temple to feel if it's right for you. Every single woman can benefit from this work. Okay, so I'm going to leave that at that. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. Thank you for being here. I love you so, so much. Thank you for continuing to share this show with other sisters that you know resonate with this work. And I also want to invite you into the Sacred Sheep Hack Facebook group if you're not already there. And otherwise, I am wishing you a blessed Samhain, a blessed full moon, and a gentle yet transformative Scorpio season. Take care. I love you so much. We will talk soon.